Welcome to News Now. The Nigerian army has confirmed that members of the Boko Haram sect attacked a military location in Borno State, killing 2 soldiers. The insurgents were, however, repelled by soldiers who killed 15 of them. Army spokesperson Colonel Sani Usman said the insurgents launched the attack at 6:30 a.m. on Thursday and that the battle lasted for 2 hours. Apart from the 2 dead soldiers, 4 other soldiers were injured in the gun battle. The troops recovered weapons and ammunition from the insurgents. The United Nations says terrorist sect Boko Haram has killed 611 teachers during its insurgency in Nigeria's northeast. In its new report entitled Launch of the 2016 Global Education Monitoring Report in Nigeria, the global body also said the sect destroyed 910 schools, while at least 1,500 others were forced to close down between 2009 and 2015. Nigeria has been battling Islamist sect Boko Haram for about 7 years now. The group, whose name means Western education is forbidding, has killed more than 20,000 people and displaced more than 2.4 million. However, in the past few months, the military has succeeded in beating back the Islamist militant sect and significantly reduced the amount of suicide attacks on innocent civilians in the northeast. The multinational Joint Task Force, which is made up of troops from Nigeria, Cameroon, Chad, Benin and Niger, has also aided in defeating the sect. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom has pledged to collaborate with the Nigerian armed forces to fight the Boko Haram insurgency in the northeast of Nigeria. British Assistant Chief of Defence Staff Simon James Ankona made the pledge during a courtesy visit to the Nigeria Chief of Defence Staff General Gabriel Olonishakin. He said the UK armed forces would continue to work closely with the Nigerian counterparts towards strengthening the capacity of the Nigerian military. The UK's defence staff also commended the military and allied security agencies for their doggedness and sacrifice in the war against the Boko Haram insurgency. The National Emergency Management Agency, Nema, has confirmed that 5,403 internally displaced persons have returned to their homes after years of residing in refugee camps. The returnees, according to Nema, include 1,517 in Marfa, 1,200 in Gamboru, 750 in Kondoga, and about 1,936 are due to return in Dekwa. Now, all these places are in the northeast Borno state of Nigeria. According to Nema, over 2 million Nigerians are still living in formal camps, host communities and satellite camps in liberated communities as a result of insurgency in northeastern states of Borno, Yobe, Taraba, Gombe, Bauchi and Adamawa states that were forced to leave their homes due to the series of attacks by the Boko Haram sect in the northeast of the country. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has blamed corrupt politicians for the resurgence of militancy in the Niger Delta region. Speaking in New York when he hosted Nigerian professionals based in the U.S., Buhari said the corrupt officials are sponsoring the militants because they want to sabotage the efforts of the current administration. Recurring attacks on oil and gas facilities by militants in the Niger Delta region has cut the country's crude production, which stood at 2.2 million barrels per day at the start of the year, to around 700,000 barrels per day. The attacks have slashed output at a time when Nigeria is grappling with low global crude prices, which have hammered government revenues, weakening the naira currency and pushing up inflation to near 11-year highs. The National Economic Council, which comprises the Vice President Yemi Osinbajo and 36 state governors, has endorsed plans by the federal government to sell some national assets as part of efforts to address the current economic recession in the country. A statement from the office of the Vice President said that the sale of national assets was one of the recommendations of the Minister of Budget. Other recommendations, he said, included the diversification of the economy and the use of the recovered loot. The statement added that as part of measures to revive the economy, the President's economic management team is working on plans to generate immediate larger injection of funds into the economy through asset sales. The government also wants to fast-track procedures through legislation and implementation of strategic implementation plan of the budget. As expected, of course, more reactions have continued to trail the call for the sale of Nigeria's national assets. Here are the views expressed by some financial analysts we spoke to earlier.
My conditional support for that sale of assets, that the process of the sale must be invested in other economically viable or economically important assets, such that the assets that will be reclassified from selling off existing assets to the new assets will have multiple beneficial effects to the economy. And my take is that that investment should go into transport infrastructure. If we are selling our shares in the JV joint venture assets or in NLNG, then that money should go into critical infrastructure like the highways or the standard gauge rails.
Money coming from extractive industry, it should be used, should be invested in trying to improve the environment. So you put infrastructure in place, you build industries, you know, and so on. You increase power supply, and you make the environment more attractive. That endures. But when you not take it and consume it, now that means you are denying the following generation, the opportunity of this asset, and this asset should belong to all of us. So I think it's something that's very difficult. But then, like I said, if you're having difficulties with attracting loans, like we say, want to attract, and you're not coming to us, we're not getting it, and we now need to reflect this economy because we can't continue to go this way, then nothing is off limits. So we can sell it and then hope that we can sell it and make better use of it. And if we can do that, then we expect that as we go forward, we'll improve the environment, and so on and so forth.
Meanwhile, the managing director of a New York-based investment and economic risk consultancy, Kuranga and Associates Limited, David Kuranga, has slammed the calls for the sale of some government assets. Speaking on our flagship program, TV360, Kuranga said the idea to sell the assets was coming at the wrong time. He said the government would not make any profit from the sales owing to the drop in the value of oil assets across the world and the government-poor relationship with most multinational companies operating in the country. According to Kuranga, current market conditions suggest that it is more advisable for the government to hold on to its assets rather than attempt to sell them off.
The market conditions to sell assets or privatize assets is very poor. The economy is in a recession, and oil prices are very low. So when we're talking about oil assets or any assets in general, the market conditions are not optimal. With the currency crisis, with the current recession, this is not the time to sell and get the best price. So no, it would be malpractice for me to advise any government in recession to try to liquidate its assets, if that was the best time to liquidate its assets. There are some exceptions to that, where there are certain assets that the government may hold that are not functioning properly, that a private-public partnership would be very beneficial. But for the most part, when you're in recession, and particularly in a sector like the oil industry that is in a downturn, this is not the time. You sell on the uptick, not on the downtick, and that's common sense. And so someone suggesting that the government should be selling oil assets in particular at this time, that's just treacherous. That's a non-starter. It's not even to discuss that. It's unbelievable that that's even being suggested. It is not in public interest to liquidate oil assets at this time. The market is not optimal for that. The second thing is the relationship of the government with oil companies right now is poor. Almost every single oil company that Nigeria does business with has defrauded the country in some way or another. They've either not paid taxes, they've lied about the amount of oil that they have taken, and or the times in which they lifted the oil has been adjusted and manipulated to take advantage of lower prices as opposed to the higher prices that they actually took it, that they shouldn't have been paying. So, through the audits and through the various checks, we've seen there are ongoing disputes, litigation right now with almost every single oil operator. All of them have been chased after for tax fraud and other types of improprieties on their part. So who exactly are these assets supposed to be sold off to? These people who have been defrauded the country? I mean, are you kidding me right now? The government doesn't even have a good relationship with any of them.
Now, the Nigerian Air Force has commissioned the Air Force Girls Comprehensive School in Abuja, the nation's capital. Speaking during the commissioning, Chief of the Air Staff, Air Marshal Siddiq Abubakar, says the Air Force is committed to improving the quality of education in the country. Also present at the event was a representative of the Minister of Education, Adamu, who commended the Air Force for his Air Force Chief now for his focus on education of the girl child, which according to him ranks high and remains an integral factor in nation building.
My vision since I came in is to reposition the Air Force into a highly professional service through capacity building so that we can be efficient, effective in employing air power to deal with Nigeria's security challenges. Now, a professional service, for you to have a professional service, you need to have training, which we have focused on in the last 1 year. We have trained quite a number of our personnel, both within and outside Nigeria. Right now, as I speak to you, we have about 28 pilots that are flying in different parts of the country in order to acquire the required skills and training so that they can be effective in employment of air power in dealing with some of these security challenges that we have. Now, a professional service also has needs for the education of our wards. You know, you cannot have a professional service if you do not take care of the family. The human being is the most important resource. And one way you can do that is to make sure that you provide for the needs of your personnel. And this educational infrastructure that we have here is aimed at providing for the needs of our personnel that are here, not only in Abuja, but in every part of the country. And so that is why we are focusing on making sure that while we are giving training, we are also making sure that our airplanes are flying. We are equally taking care of the needs of our personnel. And that exactly fits into my desire or my vision to move the Air Force to where I think it should be.
It is very, very impressive. This is a step in the right direction. We in the Federal Ministry of Education are glad that this kind of structure has been put up here, and especially for it being directed towards the most underprivileged group, which is the girls. I think that this would go to a great extent to curb the out-of-school children syndrome, which Nigeria is known for, especially the out-of-school girls. And I think that this also will encourage the other arms of government to follow suit in what has been done here today.
I know the constraints being faced by all the services, including the Nigerian Air Force, in terms of funding. But judging from what we've seen today, in terms of facility, the state-of-the-art facilities, I believe these resources, which are limited, are being utilized judiciously. And I think we have nothing to say but to commend the leadership of the Nigerian Air Force and to also appeal to other institutions, similar institutions, other services, to emulate this kind of move so that we take this country to greater heights.
President Muhammadu Buhari has signed the Paris Agreement on climate change in New York. The president said the signing of the agreement demonstrates Nigeria's commitment to a global effort to reverse the effects of the negative trend. Now, with the signing of the Paris Agreement, Nigeria is committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions unconditionally by 20% and conditionally by 45% in line with nationally determined contributions. The president described the signing as historic and also expressed confidence that with support from development partners, Nigeria will meet the targets. Members of Nigeria's House of Representatives say they will investigate whether companies and government agencies under the administration of former President Goodluck Jonathan stole $17 billion of petroleum and fuel exports. Members of the House had filed a motion late on Thursday. Johnson Agbo-Nayima said there was an urgent need to investigate the over $17 billion stolen from undeclared crude oil and liquefied natural gas exports to global destinations. The lower house of parliament said a committee would be set up next week to investigate the allegations, which involve 20 companies, 2 agencies of government and a consultant appointed by the past administration. Former Chairman House Committee on Appropriation Abdulmumin Jibrin has failed to appear before the Committee on Ethics. The House of Representatives Committee on Ethics and Privileges, however, commenced its investigative hearing into the allegations leveled against him. Jibrin is being accused of bringing the House into disrepute following his budget padding allegations against some senior officials of the House, including the Speaker, Yakubu Dogara. In July, Jibrin began slamming accusations of budget padding against the Speaker of the House and some principal officers. He also insists that Dogara should resign to allow investigations to be conducted into the matter. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll be talking business.
That was a very good business.
Yeah.
The furniture you brought was very perfect.
That's how we roll.
Because then let me do you receipts.
Yeah. How much was it again?
1 million naira.
Okay, write 2.5.
Mbano. The deal was for 1 million naira now.
Okay, write 3 million. I'll give you 500.
Oh no, I just do business like that now. Yeah.
Hey, that case, give me back my check. Let me go look for someone that understand business.
Take.
Your loss.
But it is only for incorruptible customers. What are you talking?
Now get out.
What kind of this?
You will just die.
No.
You will die.
That is the door. Now get out from here.
Rubbish.
Look, my people, make una only add money for original invoice price. That's not corruption. Say no, not in my country.
Corruption not in my country.
Welcome back. The Nigerian Naira has hit a new record low of 436 on the black market as dollar shortages on the official market persist. Nigeria's dollar reserves also stood at $24.83 billion by September 19th, down from 3.4% from a month ago. This is its lowest level in more than 11 years as central banks sold dollars on the interbank market to support the Naira. Now, currency traders said the liquidity challenges at the forex market were far from being resolved. The Central Bank of Nigeria's Monetary Policy Committee on Tuesday decided to retain the country's benchmark interest rate at 14%. The CBN also decided to leave the existing cash reserve ratios for commercial banks at 22.5%. Now, we've been speaking to an investment banker on what could be driving this rapid depreciation of the Naira, and here's what he's been saying.
Well, I think the major things are still the forces of demand and supply. Principally because we are moving towards the Christmas season, so importers, traders may have increased their demand to bring in goods ahead of the Christmas season at a period when the supply has not improved. So it's largely driven by demand and supply. And given the fact that there's no major improvement in supply source, but the demand source, this demand is still increasing, the demand is still unabated. So unless something is done to restore confidence so that those multiple sources of demand will supply will begin resume, then we might see Naira continue to depreciate. The CBN is limited to the use of monetary policy tools, and that is not sufficient to reverse a situation where there is loss of confidence in the country's currency, where supply sources have dried up or are not sufficient to meet demand, and demand is fixed at a certain minimum. So what has to happen is that the central government, the federal government, has to possibly assess offshore lending, foreign currency lending facilities to stabilize the exchange rate and restore confidence in the market such that foreign portfolio investors would actually resume, foreign direct investors will resume, and even home remittances will also be substantial enough. If nothing is done, I do not think the monetary authorities monetary tools will be sufficient to arrest the depreciation of the Naira.
Nigeria's 3 years of government shared a total of 510 billion Naira for the month of August at the monthly allocation from the Federation account. Briefing journalists at the end of the Federation Account Allocation Committee, FAC, the Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, said there was a rise in dutiable imports, which contributed significantly to the increase recorded by import duty and VAT. The minister said that the balance of the excess crude account stood at $2.91 billion.
Allocation, including solid minerals, 321,375,000,000 naira. Less 7% cost of collection to Nigerian Customs Service, 4,034,000,000 naira. 4% to the Federal Inland Revenue Service, 4,663,000,000 naira. 4% cost of collection to DPR, 2,627,000,000 naira. An NNPC refund to the federal government of 6.33 billion. Net statutory allocation is 303,721,000,000. And the distribution is as follows. The federal government of Nigeria, 149,310,000,000 naira. State governments, 75,732,000,000. Local governments, 58,386,000,000. Derivation, 20,293,000,000, making the total of 303,721,000,000 naira. The VAT gross collection for the month was 75,962,000,000, from which we deducted a 4% cost of collection in the sum of 3,038,000,000 naira, giving a net of 72,924,000,000 naira. And this was distributed as follows. Federal government, 10.939 billion. State governments, 36.462 billion. Local governments, 25.523 billion, and making a total of 72,924. So the grand summary is as follows. Statutory gross 315,046, VAT 75,962, giving a total distributable of 391,008, to which we added an exchange gain of 84,263,000,000 and excess PPT of 35 billion round. So the grand total is 510,271,000,000 naira. And that's the total distributed. The balance on the excess crude, 2,917,000,000 naira.
Nigeria's interbank lending rate eased to around 15% on Friday, down from nearly 40% for overnight lending a week ago, following the monthly FACT distribution. Overall, the market had a liquidity surplus of 283.61 billion naira at Friday's opening, compared with the previous week's deficit of 128 billion naira. Traders said about 231 billion naira was injected into the banking system late as states and local government were paid their budget portions. Now, tax practitioners in Nigeria have slammed the government's attitude to provision of social amenities in spite of taxes and levies paid by the citizens of the country. Tax experts at the People's Parliament Forum on Tax Development in Lagos say government has to sit up in fulfilling its duty to the people in terms of provision of social amenities for the smooth running of the economy. Correspondent Abiola Ismail has the details of that story.
Tax experts say there are about 37 million identified small and medium-scale enterprises in Nigeria today. But of that number, only around 2 million are duly registered with the Corporate Affairs Commission and pay their tax regularly.
Okay, we will not tax you, sir.
Now that Nigeria is wallowing in economic recession, players in the tax administration at this forum in Lagos say the government can generate badly needed funds by expanding its tax dragnet to capture those that are not within it.
Chairman of this occasion.
But they warn that the government must first create an enabling environment for companies to manufacture and trade.
It is known globally that a well-functioning and efficient tax system promotes economic stability and prosperity. On the contrary, a poorly functioning tax system may lead to economic woes. According to this program of ACAS, the workshop will break into 4 groups at a point to brainstorm on certain issues. However, I wish to observe, and keenly so, that taxpayers are an essential part of the modern tax system. Taxpayers cannot be ignored.
Other methods are there for us to use to encourage taxpayers to pay their taxes. And I wish that tax authorities will employ more friendly atmosphere to collect taxes from those who are willing and are ready to pay without any harassment.
But to the former Accountant General of the Federation, Kayode Nayeju, he wants a symbiotic relationship between the government and the citizen.
Chapter 2 of the Nigerian Constitution empowered the citizen to demand for certain things as fundamental rights. Good governance must be there. Security must be there. Provision of social services must be there. And the citizens too, is a basic responsibility that we pay the taxes. Any citizen that is not paying taxes and is qualifies under the Constitution to pay, is not, it has no right to ask that certain things are not done by government.
The convener of the forum, Morenike Babinti Nashaye, who wants the government to look inward for professionals in tax administration, says there is also need for a policy to discourage late or non-payment of debt, which is an impediment to social and economic growth.
You know, when foreigners come and they say, oh, we are going to give you 10 million, by the time they are going, they will take $10 billion instead of 10 million naira. So this is something that government should look into, and it's part of the things why we are here today. What Nigerians can do, government must put its feet down to say that Nigerians must be the one to do it. In other countries, they will not treat us the way Nigerian government is treating foreigners. Nobody will allow foreigners in other countries to do what their own citizens can do. We want Nigerian government to believe in us, to believe that we have more than enough experts who can actually build this nation to the level that we want.
The forum also called on the government to introduce new method of tax collection where payees can pay with less stress. Abiola Ismail, TV360 Lagos.
Oil prices fell on Friday, pulled down by a sell-off following 2 sessions of strong rises. Prices were also affected by caution ahead of a gathering of OPEC ministers next week in Algeria to discuss possible production cooperation to rein in global oversupply. U.S. crude futures were trading at $45.98 per barrel, while Brent crude oil futures were down 20 cents at $47.40 a barrel. Traders said that the declines were largely down to technical indicators and also selling pressure following strong price gains in the previous 2 trading sessions. The price falls may also be related to an increase in crude supplies, with global production already exceeding consumption almost without interruption since mid-2014. Egyptian rescue workers have found 133 bodies in the Mediterranean Sea after a boat carrying hundreds of migrants capsized. The boat sank on Wednesday off Bog Rashid, a village in Egypt's northwestern Bahria province where the Nile meets the Mediterranean. The death toll has now risen to 148. Egyptian authorities have also arrested 4 crew members of the boat, which had been carrying almost 600 migrants. Mali President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta has warned the United Nations that the failure to fully implement a nationwide peace accord was helping Al-Qaeda and Islamic State affiliated groups spread their influence in the country. Keïta said Islamist militants were using the slow implementation of the peace accords to manipulate and destroy links between different ethnic groups in Mali. UN peacekeepers are deployed across northern Mali to try to stabilize the vast region, which was occupied by separatist Tuareg rebels and Al-Qaeda-linked Islamist militants in 2012 before France intervened in 2013. Violence between rival armed groups has also distracted Mali from fighting the Islamist militants, and the country has become the deadliest place for UN peacekeepers to serve. To sports now, Super Eagles coach Gernot Rohr has included new Watford striker Isaac Success in his 23-man squad for the opening World Cup qualifier against Zambia. The coach also included Arsenal winger Alex Iwobi in his squad for the first time after he missed the last match due to injury. However, there's no place for Watford striker Odion Igalo. The 27-year-old has been excused to attend the burial of his father slated for October 8. All invited players are expected to start arriving in Abuja as from Sunday, October 2nd. Now, the Eagles were paired with Zambia, Cameroon and Algeria in Group B. The team will start its qualification campaign with a game away to Zambia October 9, 2016 and finish away to Algeria November 7, 2017. Brazilian football legend Pele has again postponed his visit to Nigeria. The soccer star was expected to be in Nigeria on Wednesday, September the 21st, but he never showed up. He had earlier postponed the visit in August due to an ill health, which also forced him to miss the opening ceremony of the Rio 2016 Olympics. The organizers in a fresh statement said the reason for the new postponement was due to a request from Pele's team. They, however, assured that the new date will be announced within the next 3 weeks. Spanish prosecutors have launched a fresh probe into the fraud case against Barcelona forward Nema and his father Nema Sr. The prosecutors are accusing the striker, his father, Barcelona's ex-president Sandro Rosell, and the club itself of concealing the cost of multi-million euro transfer from Brazilian investment fund DIS. It had lost an earlier case in July after Spanish court judge dismissed their request to try him. The judge ruled that irregularities in the high-profile transfer were detected, but said it was an issue for a civil court, not a criminal court, to settle. However, prosecutors successfully argued the player and his father were aware of potentially fraudulent dealings between Barcelona and his former club Santos to the detriment of DIS, a Brazilian investment company who owned 40% of the player's sporting rights at the time of the transfer. Well, that's it in news now. We thank you very much for watching. Continue to stay tuned to TV360.